Hi, I'm Bruce Mazzie, and welcome to This Old Car.
Today on This Old Car, we visit with John Tocar of Vintage Restorations Limited to check out some of Britain's finest sports cars, the MG and the classic 1971 Jaguar E-Type. After that, we'll check in with Old Car John to drop out the engine in a 1964 Mercury Comet. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of This Old Car.
Well, here we are at Vintage Restorations Limited. And have a look at some British cars. Hi folks, we're here visiting John Tocar in his vintage restoration shop in Mount Airy, Maryland. John's operation focuses on British and German cars. He's got a few MGs out back, and we're going to take a look at those later. But I'd like to ask John a few questions about how he got started, specifically because we come from the same part of the world. We're both New Jersey born, and I'd like John to tell us a little bit about how he got started.
Yeah, I started in about 1969, just out of high school, working on British cars. My uncle gave me a '59 Hillman Minx, and since that time, I've been continually working on British cars as a hobby. And then the hobby actually evolved into a business about in 1994, and that's what we've been doing since then.
It takes a few years to develop the kind of expertise you have here. We deal also with Old Car John of Randallstown, Maryland. He focuses on early Fords, and it took him 30 years to get established, just like it took a few years for you. Back in the old days, I used to do airplanes, and it took a lot of flying hours before I got enough faith in my own workmanship to fly the plane I built. but that's what it takes. Okay, let's have a look out in the shop and see what's going on, see what cars you have in inventory, and what kind of work you do.
Okay.
This is a beautifully restored 1961 MGA. I used to have one just like this. One of the first cars that John did. And he tells me that when he started, he painted this in his driveway. Incredible, because it's a very fine paint job. It's acrylic lacquer, holding up very well. Let me stop talking, John. I want you to tell us a little about the car.
Yeah, actually in the old days you could do lacquer paint jobs. Now you can't really do them, but this was actually a composite of 3 cars. Sometimes these things are so in such bad shape you need to have 3 to make one. But I had finished this one in 1980, and it's the original lacquer paint job, as he had said. And I drive it occasionally into shows, and it's really one of my first jobs, and it's still holding up pretty well.
20 years, got wires on it, knockoff hubs. This has the what size engine?
It's a 1600 engine.
1600 4-cylinder?
4-cylinder, yeah.
Now early on they came out with a dual overhead cam engine.
That's right. That was the MGA twin cam.
Yeah.
And that was
mine
rare.
was the twin cam.
You had a twin
661,
cam?
yeah.
That's a very rare,
It was, yeah, and I practically gave the car away too, because I was broke and had to.
I wish I had known you then.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. They only made about 2,000, 1,100 twin cams, so they're very rare.
Yeah, the engine almost had a Y on the top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very nice.
Yeah.
This is the same engine that's in an Austin Mini, but with a single carburetor, right?
Well, the Austin Mini had a single, and I believe the Minis only had a 1275cc motor.
1275.
Where the MGAs, the biggest MGA 4-cylinder, at least an inline 4, was a 1622cc, which is a 62.
We looked at a Metropolitan a few weeks ago, and the engine looked a lot like this, except it had a single carburetor.
Right.
It may have been...
Well, the standard British Motor Corporation engines will all look very similar on all the cars, so that's probably why.
The only difference I can see, other than the carburetors, was that the valve cover was painted green.
Right,
Otherwise, it looked
exactly.
like the same engine. Mm-hmm. Fine. Yeah. Let's have a look around, look at some of these other pieces and what you're doing on the other MGA out back.
Okay, very good.
After you.
Okay, what we have here is a 1951 MGTD.
Beautiful.
Which we had just completed, or it is nearly complete at this time, and it was a ground-up restoration as well. Yeah, these cars were really handmade to a point where when they were rolling them down the assembly line, which they did by hand, by the way, they actually had these this bonnet section, or hood as you would know it, and they were cut oversized. So they had guys with the old tin snips trimming them to fit each individual car. Wow. Which is something that would never happen today, obviously. And they do have a lot of wooden components in them. There are wooden structures inside this cowl area as well as inside the door, wooden structure. Okay, and the sheet metal is actually formed around the wood. Okay, on these models, like all T-Series MGs, the gas tank was what they call a slab tank, which was mounted on the rear of the car, which is external from the inner workings of the car. And as well, there was a spare tire mounted on the rear, which made it fairly easy to change if you had a flat. It's very unusual by today's standards. One of the important things about a TD when you do a restoration is to watch how the doors close and open. That's a pretty solid, well-fitting door panel, but it takes quite a bit of hand effort to get these doors to fit. Because when they came from the factory, each door was made a little bit different in size so they would fit the differences in the body configuration. As you know, the quality control at that time was basically nil. So that's how they put them together.
Yeah, this car represents the beginning of the sports car revolution in the United States.
On the interior of the MG T-Series cars, the back seats and the bottom cushions were all in leather. And what they call the naugahyde finish on the dash, which is wood, by the way. You have a little glove compartment inside. And this particular car, we have the instruments out because they're in England now being rebuilt at the present time. One other feature is the windshield wiper motor, put in a very, by today's standards, dangerous place because the passenger could hit it in the event of a
put a nice dent
accident.
in your forehead.
Nice dent, right. But they were also manual. In case the power failed, you could operate them manually.
So you could turn it by hand if
Right. This car here is probably worth somewhere on the order of, I'd say, $21,000 to $25,000, somewhere in there.
Nice. The red is irresistible.
Right. Sports car red.
Sports car red. And the British Racing Green is nice, too, like that other one you have over there.
Right. Those are probably the two most popular colors for these cars.
Let's have a look at the frame on which this thing sits. You have a couple of them over here.
Yeah, right over here we have two MG chassis that are being reconstructed from the ground up. This is an MG T-Series chassis, which is the same unit that's under the red car I just showed you here. And all the suspension has been completely redone, rebuilt. The brake lines have been replaced. The brake system has been renewed. The hydraulic shocks, these are the shock absorbers, quite different from today's units, where they're kind of a hydraulic unit, which is a lifetime unit. Then we have rack and pinion steering in the front. And the MG used this front suspension for many years, beginning in the 50s, right out until the end of the MG car production in 1980.
What are these shocks coated with? What's the coating?
Oh, that's sort of a just an epoxy-based material for preservation, keep it from rusting out.
It looks almost like cast steel, so it's a nice color, stainless steel color.
Yeah.
And the frame next to it on the left over here?
This is an MGA frame, 1957 MGA. And we've got the body for this car on our rotor body, which I can show you later.
There's a tremendous difference in the two. They went from a straight ladder to a real curved, rather complex frame. The gas tank now is integrated into the body under the trunk.
Exactly. I think they probably added a lot more beef to the frame because of the safety. The only crash rail protection one had in a T-Series car was this rail here, which isn't very much. On an MGA, you have a little more beef.
This piece here?
Right, this piece right here.
How's the steering on these cars?
Oh, very, very responsive. Very responsive. Both, again, have rack and pinion steering, and they're very, very good handlers.
How big a following does MG have in this area?
Well, there's usually a club for many of the automotive marques in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. There's the MG Car Club out of D.C. has at least I'd say 250 members.
Wow.
And the MGT Register, which I'm a member of also, has probably about 75 members. So they're pretty active. You can find the car show once a month here, in this area for British cars.
This is the body to the frame, the MGA frame that we just saw on the other side of the building. We're going to follow this project through to completion. John and Joe are working on 2 MGAs here, so we'll try to follow them until they're both finished. John, why don't you tell us where you are with this body?
Okay, well, this body, we've had this in the shop for about a year now, and it has been completely what they call media blasted. All the material, like the paint and the external filler and other products, have been stripped off the body inside and out. And it's on one of these rotobody frames, whereas you can flip the body 360 degrees to make sure you get everything stripped off it. After it's stripped, you put a series of primers on it. This is a epoxy primer that they use as a base. And then what we're going to do is we're going to paint this, the underside first, set it back on the frame, and then fit the body panels up, and then paint the outside of the car while it's on the frame.
I see.
Okay.
What kind of work will you do under here? I see that there's a patch right here. Did you guys put that in?
Right. We did some major, what I call reconstructive surgery on this body. The entire bottom rails, the inner sills, and the rockers have all been redone. Just the clamp holding the fender here, but we've got all this metal is all new because all of these MGAs, because of the age, they were never really preserved very well, and all of them would be rusted away. And the beauty of it is you can buy a lot of these pieces too.
I know you can buy the rockers and the fenders and whatnot. I noticed something here that's very interesting. This is a Cleco tool, and being an old aviation buff, I use these all the time, both for the holes and for the clamps. I love these things.
They are. They're very effective.
Yeah. Did all the MGAs, I mean, they had the exterior color inside the engine compartment?
That's correct.
I notice a lot of them, when you see them today, they're painted black inside.
Yeah, well, certain owners...
The restoration was done on the outside only.
Right, right.
Well, let's turn around and look at what Joe's doing on this MGA body right next to us here.
Okay, I'd like to introduce Joe McGinnis, who is my senior restoration technician and welder. Tell us a little about this MGA he's working on. Joe?
Okay, I guess we're doing a complete restoration on this, and we noticed that before we started on it, that the front end had been hit quite extensively, actually, and apparently it was an older restoration, and they had put lead in the whole front of the nose, all the way around there, all the way up to here. And what I'm doing now is I'm just taking some of the old lead out, find out exactly where it's damaged. Basically what you do is you just heat it up and it just rolls right out. Should start rolling down here. Try not to get it too hot. You don't want to warp the metal. Seems to stick in there pretty good. This lead is 27 years old, maybe 24 years old. It's been in there. It's not too hard to get off, it's just a little time consuming. Then you can take a wire brush. It cools off real quick. Let's see if we can't. Just scrape it right off. See if we can't get it all out and show you how much there was in there. Quite a bit, actually. Now I'm going to have to do that to the whole nose. The problem with this car that we noticed was this area was up about 1 inch, which meaning that the car got hit in the front and it moved this area up. And what I'm doing now is I have it come along here, pulling this part of the car down. At the same time, I'm I have a porta-power here, and I'm pushing this up. Actually, if you can see by the lead, whoever did this repair before, they built a lot of this up. Instead of physically pushing the metal up to where it should be, they just filled it in with the lead. I guess what we're going to do is fix it right this time, I guess. Repair it a little nicer than it was the last time. What I did, I don't know if you can see, but the damage actually traveled all the way up to here. And when I started to push it, I started repairing the furthest damage, furthest from the accident, from the initial impact, I guess, first, and then I worked my way towards the front. And hopefully everything goes smoothly and it comes out nice and straight. And it doesn't always work that way, but that's the plan anyway.
Okay, what we have here is an MGTD body tub which has been disassembled to be totally restored. And some of the repair work that's been done on it is a lot of the sheet metal has been replaced. But I wanted to point out the inner timbers or the inner structure of an MGTD is wood. This is all painted black, but it's all wood in here. It's actually ash. The wood is ash. Here, and along here as well. Even the so-called pillar, door pillar, is wood as well. And there's a back plywood panel here that makes up the back section. And you have wood members here, and these sections are bolted together and bolted to the frame. And that's what we have here. Okay, this is the door, and this is the also a lot of wood members in this door frame here as well, and some brass hinges they made. So it's a matter of fitting the body up in its best possible form off the car and then lowering it on the frame to get the final fit. And now these bodies are actually painted before they're assembled to the frame, which makes it a nicer job. And that's how they were done at the factory too. Okay, this is the undercarriage of a 52 MGTD, and you can see some of the components: the stainless steel exhaust system, the rear differential. And this box here is the side curtain compartment, which is where you would store the window curtains in this box from the top side. And the floorboards are also wood, which are in this section here.
Nice car. Very, very nice.
Okay, looking forward under the undercarriage, we've got the transmission mount, the master cylinder, which is located under the floorboard on the driver's side, the oil pan, which was cast aluminum, by the way. The whole bottom of the engine is actually the oil pan, and some of the clutch linkage, and of course the front suspension, which as I mentioned earlier, was used, they started using that same design in 1950 and used it right up until 1980.
John, I noticed there's like a stipply finish on the bottom of the fenders. That's evidently to prevent stones from hitting.
Yeah, it's sort of like a what they call a gravel guard finish.
Gravel guard.
This car is in here for really a service job that we're working on. It had some problems with the carburetors. And normally, to do the correct restoration, that should be body color and body finish without any kind of a sealant or any kind of a protectant in there. But the owner probably wanted to make this kind of a practical driver to prevent stone chips and so on from damaging the paint. That's why they coated it with that material. Okay, 1971 Jaguar E-Type, 4.2 liter, 6-cylinder, twin overhead cam. Pretty exotic vehicle, very, very desirable. This car was rescued from a field. It sat out for about 2 years, and we're going to be getting it running again and eventually do a ground-up restoration on it. It can be fairly expensive and take a few years to do, and hopefully it'll come out okay.
Well, that about wraps it up for our tour in Vintage Restorations Ltd. We'll be back to see John Tocar in future episodes to check out the progress on other classic restorations. Now it's off to see Old Car John as he prepares to remove the engine on a 1964 Comet.
We're going to pull in another car from John's inventory, a 64 Comet. He sold the body to a street rod fan, and we're going to pull the engine and transmission to later install in an old Econoline. Here it comes. This car sat for 3 years without being run, and here it is. Started right up. Well, oh, wow. Go ahead.
Okay, this is a 1964 Comet. This car actually is a one-owner, little old lady car. Oh, maybe that's prejudice. But it actually has 54,000 miles on it. It's actually better than most cars we start with. But I'm going to actually take the engine and trans out of the car right now. The bottom of the car is no rust in the bottom. It just looks terrible because it's always been sitting outside.
Yeah, Street Rider's going to take this car and put a big block V8 in it and put a bright paint job on it and go to cruise-ins on Saturday night. But this car is better than most of the cars that we start with in restoration. Good example of the fact they're still out there.
The man I'm selling the body to, actually, he's going to put a 429 Ford engine in this car. He's going to make it a Saturday night cruiser. Which the car, like I say, as Bruce mentioned, is not a real desirable car, but for something of that nature, this is a real nice car because you can start on a low budget and make something that you can go out and cruise on Saturday night in the summertime to the drive-ins. This is what is actually going to happen to this car. So it's one that's going to be saved. It's not going to be trashed.
Good. Okay, we're going to take the hood off first and then begin the process of pulling this engine out of here. You get that side off, and I'll hold this side while you grab the other. Take this old beat-up battery out of here. Here. Yeah, we're going to take the radiator out of here. This is a real good engine and an automatic transmission, low mileage, so it'll go good in another car. Same engine that was put in the Mustang. This was the big six of the two sixes, right?
Well, he had a 170 this year. That was a bigger one, yes.
Yeah. Now, years ago, I used to do this on airplanes when I was an aviator.
Everything behind that name crashed when I saw it.
I've had some Craftsman tools for like 20 years. They were my dad's. And I like that guarantee. If they break, you can still take them back. Here she comes.
It's full because I filled it up this morning.
It came.
Just a little minor, I guess, huh?
Turn, break off.
Stuck.
Thanks for watching This Old Car. Bruce will be back next week with more great classic cars, fact-filled interviews, and restoration tips. Until next week, I'm Chuck Baker for This Old Car.